Hi there, listener, and welcome to the fourth in our series of podcasts covering the best snow sports equipment for 2025. We've already looked at the best skis, the best ski boots, the best ski jackets, and today we're going to be looking at two really important areas for all skiers and snowboarders, and that is helmets and goggles. Now, before I go on, I'd like to put a quick shout out for Ellis Brigham. This special episode of the Ski Podcast has been made possible by them. Ellis Brigham are the winter sports specialists. They have 16 shops around the UK where you can find all the kit that you need for this winter. Alternatively, simply go to their website at ellis-brigham.com where you can buy online now. Right, my name's Ian Martin. And this series of podcasts wouldn't be possible without my regular guest and equipment expert, Al Morgan. Hi, Al. How are you today?
Morning, Ian. I am good. And you know what? Goggles for me are one of the coolest bits of kit in skiing. I know there's all the other sexy stuff like skis, but goggles for me. So this is going to be great.
Cool. Okay. Well, Al isn't just the equipment expert for the Ski Podcast. You'll find his work at Telegraph Online and Full Line Skiing Magazine, and he is always testing kit. And I know we've covered this in previous episodes, but Al, I wondered if you could just start by reminding our listeners how and where you've tested the products we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the main testing periods is a week in January when the whole UK snow sports trade decamps to a different location. So last winter in January, we were in La Clusaz in France, a resort made famous because of Candide's incredible skiing. And that was a great testing location because the conditions are really challenging, actually. It was really, really hard packed for a lot of it. I go out a bit earlier than that, so I can get more products tested. And then every time I'm in the mountains, irrespective of the location, I'll be testing kit. And then I go to Glenmore Lodge, which is the National Outdoor Training Centre in Scotland, for their wild ski weekend at the end of every season, which is brilliant because Scotland as a testing environment is very hard to beat.
And we actually mentioned in the last episode when we were covering ski jackets that you've already been out to Austria this autumn to test product for 25, 26 and even 26, 27, right?
Yeah, so it's amazing the lead time on some of these bits of kit, you know, just the amount of time that it takes and one of the products actually that we're going to talk about, you know, that's about 2 years to develop that helmet. So yeah, sometimes we get glimpses ahead of when we can talk about it.
Excellent. Well, listener, if you haven't listened to our episodes on skis, ski boots, ski jackets, they're all available in the Ski Podcast back catalogue. And in fact, all of this series of equipment episodes are out on YouTube as well. You'll find those at the Skipedia YouTube channel, where you can see what Al and I look like, as well as hearing our voices, if that's what you'd like to do. Now, today, we're going to be looking at helmets and goggles. We're going to start off with helmets and then move on to goggles after that. And we'll be looking at some of the different options at the top, middle, and entry level points of the market. And we're going to explain some of the bits of jargon that are going to crop up when Al talks about the goggles as well. So let's start off with tackling some of that jargon, demystifying it a little bit on the helmet side of things. And I wanted to start with something that's, I mean, not really jargon, I suppose. I mean, it's a phrase you've used before, particularly when we talked about ski boots, and that is fit is king. I think, you know, if you're going to buy a helmet, you really need to try it before you buy it.
Absolutely, and you know, we talk about this a lot when we're referencing ski boots, and everybody's foot shape's different. It's the same for your head. Some helmets are really round, some are oval, some will be taller on the inside. They'll have different fit systems. Make sure that it fits your head. What you don't want to be doing is having the best day, blasting down a piece, and your helmet slips over your eyes. You know, I mean, that's at the extreme. It's not really going to happen. But if you take a tumble, you don't want the helmet to slip off the back of your head and then the strap choking you. So it has to fit you, and also it's more comfortable. You're more likely to be wearing it. It's only going to protect you when it's on your bonds.
And we're going to be talking about goggles a bit later as well. But if you already have goggles and you're not buying new goggles, then you also need to make sure you've got a helmet that's going to work with your goggles. And I don't necessarily mean aesthetically. I mean, like, literally, it's got to fit them as well.
Absolutely. So the goggles are a different shape. You know, we've got different size heads. Some will want a small goggle, some will want a bigger goggle. And the curve at the top of the goggle and at the sides will work better with some helmets than with others. Of course, you could go for the same brand. You know, if you're going to get an Oakley helmet, people think, oh, I'll get an Oakley goggle. But actually, you can mix and match really well. And we do a lot of this testing to see what's going to work together. And the modern setups are far more compatible, but do try them together. So if you own a goggle, take it with you when you buy a helmet, and vice versa if you own a helmet and you're going to buy a goggle.
And this is an aesthetic bit, but personally, I really dislike anything that would give you that little gap above your goggle to your helmet. That helmet gap or goggle gap, just seems like
Now, there's a really interesting...
not something you ever want to have.
Absolutely, and lots of people have it. And what most people don't realize is that the bit that holds your head, we call the cradle, inside the helmet, not only can you adjust it to be tight all the way around your head, above your eyebrows, around the back, but you can adjust it vertically at the back on most helmets. So you can get rid of that gap between, obviously, if the goggle's really flat and the helmet's really curved at the front, you will have that little gap. But if there's a uniform gap around, adjust the height of the helmet at the back, and it'll tip it forward or back slightly to either take pressure off the goggle or get rid of that gap that you're talking about.
Excellent. Right, let's cover some more important terms. Obviously, helmets are there for your safety. I mean, back when I was doing my seasons in the mid-90s, the only place you'd see anywhere wearing helmets was in Chamonix. If I went over to Chamonix, there'd be people wearing them. Otherwise, across the whole of the Three Valleys, no one would ever wear a helmet. Whereas these, it's the opposite way around. It's really the minority of people who don't wear helmets these days.
Nowadays,
so
absolutely.
And it's for safety reasons, and there are a couple of acronyms, abbreviations that are relevant in this case.
Yeah, so there are safety standards around helmets. So the main two are the American safety standard, referred to as ASTM, and the European, which also does include, there's a UK CA safety mark, but we just use the European marks for helmets, and that's a CEEN number, a European norm, if you want a conformity European. So there are different numbers that go with them. In with that, we could get bogged down in the minutia of it, but yeah, make sure it's got an ASTM, and ideally you're going to get an ASTM and a CEEN number. There are a couple of different classes in the European one. One's really for racing because you have to have protection over your ears. The general skiing norm, this is the one number I'll reference, is 1077B. A is the racing one. So, but you'll see 1077, that's skiing.
And if you're looking at a helmet, it's going to have that ENCE mark on it. But you mentioned the norm there for skiing.
Yeah.
But you have some helmets that are multi-norm, so they have that safety standard applied for more than one sport.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about some of the options around that later on when we're going through the helmets. But the main other two that get applied to skiing helmets, and it's very certainly in North America when people go and skidoo, these helmets that we're talking about are certified for non-motorized snow sports. And that's an important distinction. You have to wear a different helmet if you're going to go and ride a skidoo, for example. So these for non-motorized snow sports work for skiing and snowboarding, but the cycle norm is another really interesting one that certifies a helmet for skiing and the cycle norm certifies for cycling, which also covers skating, skateboarding, roller skating, inline skating. So some are certified for that, which are great. If you're going to cycle in to do some ski touring, brilliant option. And also it means you've got a helmet you can use year round. So you're getting better value, summer and winter use. And then the other one is for mountaineering. So that's mountaineering and climbing. So the tests that they do on the helmets are slightly different. But if you're going to go ski touring and let's say you're going to rappel into a line, or you might be climbing under things or just scrambling, having a helmet that's certified for skiing and mountaineering is a really sound idea.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably not going to apply to many of our listeners, that type of thing. But sometimes when you're up at the Glenmore Lodge in Scotland, you do cycle to start your ski touring, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you carry your skis? Are they on your backpack? Is that how that
they're strapped to the frame of the bike typically? Just do it very carefully. I have destroyed skis doing this, unfortunately. But yeah, to remove the weight from your back, you strap them to the frame of the bike. In that instance, actually, you can get triple. Slightly confusing because some people call it dual certified if it's American and European certified for skiing. But when I say triple certified, I'm talking skiing, cycling, and mountaineering. And then you're covered for everything. You can have a cycle in, do the gnarliest of ascent, and then have a blast skiing back down if you want.
Okay, cool. Well, let's have a look at the helmets themselves then. So, shell is a term that we used, with ski boots, and the shell of the helmet is pretty obvious. But you've already referred to the liner, and the key thing that's giving you the safety is that foam layer on the inside of the shell, right? What is that foam, and what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll cover both bits. So the outside is the shell, and you tend to get one that's very stiff and hard, which we call hard shell. And then if you think of a normal cycle helmet, it's very light, has lots of air holes built into it, but the outer is actually polycarbonate typically, and that is bonded somehow or attached somehow to that foam liner that you reference it. And this liner inside is generally made of polystyrene, EPS, expanded polystyrene. But we do see other materials being used, like expanded polypropylene. And one of the helmets that we're talking about later, because of what they're trying to achieve with that helmet, they're using EPP liner rather than EPS. And it works like a crumple zone car, it deforms and crushes and absorbs the shock so that doesn't get transmitted directly through to your brain, your head, and it's just reducing that impact. There's other technologies that we use, but that's the main bit of safety in there.
Okay, and another thing that I have seen, I know it's going to crop up with some of the models, but I've seen this sticker on a bunch of helmets, is something called MIPS.
Yeah.
What does that stand for? Because that's somewhere in the shell liner area as well.
Yeah, and we've seen loads of developments in MIPS in recent years. Certainly the last kind of year or two, we've seen a lot more alternatives. So it's a multi-direction impact protection. So if you think the standard test for helmet is you drop something straight on top of it, yeah, but actually we don't fall like that, do we? We fall at an angle, we fall on our side, we slide, and that's an oblique or an angled fall. And that, so MIPS classically was a very thin sliding plastic layer attached by little pieces of rubber to that EPS liner. And what happened was, as the helmet hit the ground, the helmet could move a fraction of time sooner than your head had to. So instead of the brain getting rotated so fast, it took some of that rotational force out, which is really important for trying to look after our brains. And then it's developed into other systems, not just the plastic sliding layer. And MIPS has done that development with partners, the likes of Sweet Helmets and Giro, which is the same overall company there. They've come up with some other solutions, and we've got different ways of attaching that plastic layer to the helmet now also.
So that's not a standard thing, MIPS. That's
No.
are we saying it's like a kind of Gore-Tex type of thing? It's an innovation that some brands use and some brands have their own versions of it?
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So there are a lot of brands will have their own technologies in their helmet that either does a very similar thing to MIPS, or it offers other protection. So it might do loading protection, which most MIPS solutions, they don't offer any extra that loading protection. When the helmet's getting crushed, if you want, it's to do with the rotational forces. But some of the other solutions that we see from other brands, their own solutions, will deal also with that loading aspect.
Okay, excellent. Well, you mentioned before about making sure that you've got your helmet on properly, and all helmets have a strap, and it's important to make sure they're done up properly. They normally have a goggle retainer on the back as well. There's something that I came across which I'd never heard of before, which is called a Fidlock buckle. What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not a new thing. It's used in motorcycle helmets and all sorts of things, things that involve massive deceleration, huge forces on the helmet. But the Fidlock buckle is essentially, it's a magnetic buckle, and you can fasten it and unfasten it with one hand. And when you're wearing ski gloves, this is a great benefit, especially when you're taking it off. It's exceptionally secure. People often think, oh, it's not the same as a plastic buckle, put them together. But actually, it's really, really secure. But as with MIPS, it tends to be on more expensive helmets.
Okay, and you mentioned venting earlier. If you're looking at thinking about buying yourself a helmet, how important is venting? I guess it depends on what type of skiing you're planning to do, and maybe where
Absolutely.
you
What
go.
type of skiing, what time of year, where you're going. If you're, are you going to a location that's very, very cold? Then maybe you don't want all the heat escaping out of the helmet. If you're spring skiing in the Alps when it might be really mild, or you're going ski touring, then having that venting is a great option. And a lot of helmets will allow you to adjust the venting, so to open and close it. Most of them Most helmets will have little holes above the goggles, so you can let the heat escape from the goggle and let airflow, so the goggles don't fog up. And they generally are open all of the time. It's not normal that you would close those vents.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people are going to own one helmet for sure. So having something adjustable sounds like it could be advantageous. And sometimes that's just like I don't know, a little lever or a cover that you're moving back and forth. And sometimes you can fill in the gaps.
Yeah. So especially the in mold construction that we spoke of, because that's a very thin plastic layer attached to that APS liner, it's harder to put in adjustments in that. When you've got a hard shell, it's much easier to build a sliding vent cover, an adjustable vent cover in between the hard shell and the APS liner. Although, you know, with helmet developments in the last 5 or 8 years, we've seen more and more in mold type construction that have adjustable venting. But yeah, sometimes you get little plugs that you put in to fill those holes. And there are some helmets, the Giro Owen, which is a helmet I use a lot. Actually, I really like the helmet, but that's got the adjustment for the venting is actually, you've got to take the helmet off. The slider's on the inside of the helmet to keep the clean outline. But it isn't so practical when you're on a lift and you want to just shut down the venting because it's getting too cold.
Right, okay. And now talk about saying most people have only one helmet. But go on, tell us, Al, how many helmets do you have?
I don't actually know. Isn't that terrible? I test a lot of helmets, so I test them. They go on to other testers as well that I work with. You know, in Foreline we have a big team of testers, and then for other things that I do, I work with a young ski coach and kind of free ride athlete, Fionn Townsend in Scotland. So she tests a lot of the female helmets for me. But yeah, behind me at the minute there's 4 helmets, and I have more in boxes out there that we're getting through at the moment.
Yeah, well, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see all those helmets lined up behind Al just now. Okay, one more question about, let's say, the jargon side of things, just the description side of things, and that is visor helmets. Now, what I mean by this are the ones where you wouldn't wear goggles. You literally have a visor that kind of folds down in front of your face, make you look a bit like some kind of alien or a spaceman or something like that.
Yeah, they do.
Now, what are the kind of advantages of that type of helmet?
So at the start, I said how I love goggles, and I do love, I love that bit of kit. I have this real thing about goggles, but visors have become so popular, but they look very techies. They look quite space age. You know, you think Top Gun when they pull that visor down, that black visor down over their eyes on sunny days when they're flying, it looks and feels a bit like that. And some people love it because it feels really cool. You know, you have this thing, kids really love them. But it gives you a massive field of view because you don't have a frame around the lens. So your peripheral vision is excellent. And it's a brilliant solution for if you wear prescription glasses. You and I both now, when we're talking, have prescription glasses on. I don't yet, thankfully, have to wear them when I'm skiing. But some of the guys and girls that I test with do, and a visor solution can work really well in that situation.
Right. Okay, excellent. One area I'd like to cover before we go on to the specific products that you've chosen is sustainability. And I wondered if we could just tackle that in relation to helmets and goggles together. Because, we often discuss this, the sustainability side of things with the different brands and what they're bringing in. And I wondered if you'd seen any kind of standout developments in this area, because evidently, because we're talking about safety, there's certain compromises that can't be made with something like helmets.
Yeah, and I've had a few different conversations with brands and the people behind these developments and these technologies. And one of the challenges is, yes, you have certain standards you have to satisfy. But there's developments that we've seen, even just simple things. So the APS liner, then people are putting natural materials in that to help it break down quicker at the end of its life. But these is kind of a progress which we've seen in recent seasons. What's great is we're seeing more and more brands adopt these techniques. A real standout for me this season, and it's a helmet we're going to talk about, so I'm not going to kind of spoil it now, but the solution here is you make the helmet as recyclable as possible. So you can use recycled materials in it. Fantastic. So that reduces that carbon footprint when you manufacture the helmet. But by making it out of primarily one group of materials, one original material type, it's much easier to break down. And this is the same problem that we see with ski boots, with clothing. When a an item has lots of different material classes in it, to separate those out is really, really difficult at the end of its life. And that's one of the restrictions in recycling it. So this development in the helmet that we'll talk about is super exciting.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in relation to ski boots, because with the ski boots, you've got the metal of the buckles and the actual shell and then the liner, and they're all made of different things. And
Absolutely.
so overcoming that to make it practical to break it down for end of life is really important. So, okay, we'll tackle that a little bit later on. Go on then. Let's move on to the actual helmets themselves. You've picked out 5 for us. So caveat, fit is king. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so we're starting at the upper end. So I mentioned the Giro Own, which is my own helmet, which I use a lot. But this is also by Giro. It's called a Tour, and it has a similar system. So Giro Bell is the same overall company, and they have a lab in America, and they developed with MIPS something called a Spherical. So there's essentially 2 bits of helmet foam, that APS liner, one's APS, one's APP, and it's like a ball and socket, so one can turn inside the other. So when I said MIPS didn't deal with loading, it dealt with rotational forces. This does both, so it's brilliant seeing this adaptation. The Owens are an in mold, so it'll show knocks and dinks more quickly. The Tour's just a tougher outer on the helmet. You've got adjustable venting on that on the outside. It's easier to use. It is £250, so it is that higher. Yeah, absolutely. There are way more expensive helmets, but yeah, this is at the upper end. Really, really comfortable. Good venting. Good, tough, durable construction, but you've got that enhanced safety.
Okay, I probably should say at this point for you, listener, there'll be links to all of these in the show notes and images of them as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll try and drop an image in as well, just so you can get a feel for it. But this is Giro or Giro. I'm not too sure. I'm certainly familiar with them as far as cycling helmets are concerned, because I'm pretty sure my cycling helmet is a Giro. That's Giro, and then Tour, like Man Tour in the
Giro Tour Spherical. So you think of the Giro d'Italia, the cycle race. That's why I call it Giro. So, but Giro Tour Spherical, and it's £250.
Yeah. Okay. So, slightly more affordable, second on your list, but still, it is one of the Visor helmets that we were talking about just earlier.
Yeah, and you know what? I go around loads of different stores talking with staff in various roles that I have in skiing, and it's really interesting when you see which products are selling well, because this is not the most technical helmet. So this is a helmet by Atomic. They do more expensive versions with their own version of MIPS in it. They call it Amid. But this doesn't have it. But the construction, so the internal that APS liner is, they call it an egg box construction. So there's peaks and troughs in there to work as crumple zones. So it is actually about 30% higher in terms of the force that it dissipates compared to the European norm, the standard that it has to have. But yeah, it's £180. It's called the Savor visor, and it comes with a what they call a stereo lens, which is their like more affordable price point. They do more expensive lenses, but actually the color handling on it's really, really good. You get a good space inside for your goggles. You have to use different pivots which come in the box if you're not your goggles. Good space inside for your prescription glasses, but you use the OTG mounts that come with it. But I think the thing that, from talking to shop staff and having worn this helmet quite a bit, it's just the comfort. People put it on the head and it fits them really well and it's really comfortable. It has this almost memory foam type lining on the band around your head. Under there's a comfort lining, soft fabric inside, and in between that and the APS there's this kind of memory foam, and I think that's a little bit of the secret sauce in that helmet.
Okay, and in your notes you mentioned it's got a hydrophobic coating. What does that mean?
Yeah, so you think if you are skiing and snow hits the lens of the visor, or it's classic for me is snow cannons, when it's a bit mild and they're a bit wet. So the hydrophobic is just the water's going to hit it, beat up and run off, rather than sticking all over your lens. So, and most lenses will have hydrophobic and oleophobic, so they don't get finger marks on them. But who are we kidding? You stick your grubby little mitts on any kind of lens, it's going to show it up. So.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, we'll talk later on about the best way of cleaning lenses. However, so that was 180, and then slightly less expensive. Next on your list, what have you got there?
Yeah, so if anybody's watching this, that white helmet, in the corner,
Yeah,
that
that's
one,
it.
that's
Yeah, you're pointing right at it.
exactly. Thank you. Bern Watts 2.0 MIPS. So many moons ago, I bought myself a Bern Watts, and it was heavier than this is. So it was just hard shell and had a different kind of, as I mentioned, different kind of foam inside. So they've changed the construction. So now it's a hybrid. So it's got mostly hard shell, so it's really tough. But in the side, they use some in mold. They call it zip mold, but in mold construction. It's got that foam liner on the inside to absorb the shocks. A peak. So some people call it a visor, but it's a peak. Like on a cap, but at the front. And part of that style, it looks like a skate helmet, and for very good reason. It's certified for skiing and for cycling. So therefore, as I mentioned earlier, it also covers skating. So it comes with their winter liner, but you can pop that out, and then there's a much smaller summer pad that you put in there for your brow. So you can use it at the skate park in the summer if you're going to go cycling. You can take the goggle clip off the back, so it maintains that clean outline. It's got loads of venting in it, so you're nice and cool in the summer. So in terms of value, it's a little bit less than that visor helmet. It's £160, but the fact you can use it for numerous sports year round, and it has that great look, and it is noticeably lighter. It's a very round fit, so if you struggle with an oval fit of many helmets, so the two we've spoken about previously are a bit more oval. This is a very round fit. So yeah, again, go try them on and see, but excellently versatile.
Well, I have to say that last year when we recorded this helmets podcast, you kind of embarrassed me when I admitted how old my helmet was and told me immediately that I should replace it because it had been compromised. And so I now have one of these helmets, Bern Watts helmet. And I haven't used it for cycling at all. I'm planning to take it with me, and I'll be using it for the first time when I go out to Courchevel and Mirabel in December. So I'll give my own report on that one.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'll be going up to Scotland and cycling to do some ski touring, we'll see about that. Okay, what's next on your list, Al?
Yeah, so this is the helmet that I've referenced about and not given the name of. So it's by Salomon, which most people hopefully know in skiing, a big brand in skiing. It's called the Brigade Index. So they do a Brigade, but this is a 96% made from the same material. Yeah, so the liner inside isn't EPS, it's EPP, expanded polypropylene, and it does have a good amount of venting. You don't get some of the bells and whistles on it. You don't have a Fidlock bottle because they're trying to make sure it's as recyclable as possible, but nice and light, really comfortable. You've got this whole sustainability story happening. I'd say story. It's not, it's a fact. This helmet is more recyclable than any other helmet on the market. It's the first fully recyclable helmet to hit the snow sports market. You can get it in black or white. Really clean outline. I love how it looks. I was really excited. I first saw it back in January, maybe a bit earlier. Yeah, but £110, so low price point. Still got the normal features. You've got that removable washable liner. You've got the goggle retainer, and it looks fantastic.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and then the final one, more of a what you might call an entry level type of a helmet. What have you got there for us?
Yeah, so this is the lower end of price points. It's £85. It's from Oakley. So Oakley's snow sports helmets are their mod line. They've got Mod 1, which we're talking about here. They do Mod 1 Pro, Mod 1 MIPS, Mod 3, Mod 5, Mod BC, Mod 7. I've tested and played with all of these. And the Mod 5 is brilliant. It's really comfy, a bit more padding than the Mod 3, which is slightly lighter. But the thing that I love about this Mod 1 is it has a very clean, that kind of skate park look, which a lot of people will get this helmet for freestyle skiing. So they're going to take the liner out, run their goggle strap underneath, and it looks fantastic. Nice and light, good price at £85. Now, it won't take the knocks and dinks on the outside of something like the Mod 5, which has a harder shell. This is the in-mold construction. It's just really, really comfortable. I love the fit on the Oakley helmets. They do have a new helmet, the Mod BC, which is that kind of dual cert in terms of it'll cover you for mountaineering and for skiing. What I love about that helmet is the way that it packs on the back of your backpack. When you attach your helmet to your backpack, when you're going touring or hiking, they often stick out quite a lot. But the way that the ear flaps fold in, it has certain ways to hold on to sunglasses, which are always a problem if you are going to skin up and you want to take your sunglasses off when you're wearing a ski helmet. But yeah, the Mod 1 is what we're referencing here. It's £85, available in loads of colors, and it looks sweet.
Oh, and from what you're saying there, lead-in model sounds like something the teens would go for. They'd be happy to wear Oakley when they're going to the park. And that Mod BC one that you mentioned, you're talking about how it goes onto your backpack. Certainly when I'm ski touring, the previous helmet that I had, it just was not the right size.
Yeah,
everything was rigid about it, bounced around. It was really difficult to do. So I'm hoping that will be different this season.
yeah, and yeah, it's really nice that Mod BC, but yeah.
Cool. Regular listeners will know that Ellis Brigham have been sending in their own choices as well. And this week we've got Chrissy from Ellis Brigham in Braehead. And I'm going to drop that in. If you're listening to the podcast now, you can listen to that. And if you're watching on YouTube, I can tell you that her choice was the Smith Method Pro MIPS helmet. What do you think about that?
I skied in the helmet. There's one I had, and I had the most fantastic graphic across the back mountains graphic. I really liked skiing in that. It has that kind of clean outline, like we've spoken of with things like the Mod 1. Yeah, it worked really, really well. I mean, it's a great choice. I'm not surprised that they've chosen that helmet.
Oh, okay. Well, we've covered 6 helmets there, 5 of Al's choices and 1 from Ellis Brigham. Let's move on to goggles. We've already discussed a little bit about the sustainability side of things, but let's look at some of the jargon or the technical side of things. Now, evidently, a point of wearing goggles is to protect your eyes. There's a theme in this particular episode, protecting your head, protecting your eyes. And specifically, we're thinking about protecting them from ultraviolet rays. And there is some technical jargon technical jargon relating to that. What, do you just want to develop on that?
Yeah, so the main thing is when you look at goggles, and to be honest, if you get any good brand of snow sport goggles, it's going to do this. Same with good brands of sunglasses. You want to block the harmful UV rays that are going to get to your eyes. So UVA, UVB rays, classically. And the number that people look for is UV 400. And that's actually better than the norm that they have to satisfy. So if you're getting a goggle that has UV 400 rating, that's really, really good. That's the gold standard. That's what you want to look at.
Okay, excellent. Now, another issue with goggles, which I think probably was more of an issue historically, and it's certainly going to be affected maybe by how much money you spend on your goggles, is fogging.
Yeah.
I mean, out of interest, ideally it's not going to happen at all with the models that we're talking about. But how does it happen, and how do you get rid of it?
Yeah, so getting rid of that's an interesting question, but we'll cover that. So the classic is you're really, really warm. You're working really hard when you're skiing. Your body's producing a lot of moisture. It's cold outside. The goggle's cold, and it fogs up. I mean, you get the other extreme in that you go from outside where it's really cold and you walk into a restaurant. And if you wear prescription glasses or if you've got your goggles on, you will see the outside of them fog up straight away. And essentially, that's what's happening on the inside of the goggles. You're getting warm, moist air hitting a cold surface, and therefore you get the moisture condensing on the inside of the lens. Modern goggles are really good at venting, and they have coatings on them to stop that happening or limit that happening somewhat. The issue that you have is that coating is softened by moisture by a lot of brands. So if you get fog and then you go, oh great, I'm just going to wipe that all off, and the anti-fog coating has got softer, all you are doing, yes, you're cleaning the fog off, but you're also stripping the anti-fog coating and damaging it. So I would urge people not to, if you crash and get snow in your goggle, or if it gets misted up on the inside, you get a lens cloth with all these goggles, just dab at it, just sponge the moisture off. Don't go crazy and wipe the inside of it. If you've got snow in it, take the goggle off, turn upside down, just knock it on your leg to get the snow to fall out. Dab any moisture on so you can use it. It may not be perfect vision, but use it, and then let it air dry when you're having your lunch or when you're going in for a hot chocolate or whatever you're doing. That's a better way to look after the longevity of that coating on the inside of the lens.
Yeah, I mean that must be probably the most common error, spending huge amounts of money on a really high-tech pair of goggles and then removing or making them worse by trying to clean them.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of, yeah, exactly. Clean them on the inside. And the other thing is, and I'll go back to snow cannons again. People might have had it when you ski in a snow cannon, you get this really odd kind of moist snow coming out and it freezes onto your goggles. And then people try and get that off, but that pulls the mirror coating off the goggles, or you end up scratching them. And I have seen goggles destroyed like that. One of my saddest moments with goggles, I had a brand new pair. They were nearly 200 pounds. I love these goggles. I got on my first lift to go up the hill, big bubble lift, and somebody left go of their skis and they slid across the front of my goggles on my helmet and scratched right across the middle of the lens. And I hadn't even used them.
Oh, that is like really annoying. So yeah, take bottom line there. Take care of your goggles. Okay, let's talk about lenses because you got the lenses scratched there. To most people, you're thinking, I've got two pairs of lenses here, bright ones or light ones and dark ones. Most of the time, you're wearing dark ones, and then you get to that point where the light is changing. Maybe it's going a bit flat. I don't know if you can even answer this question, but how do you decide when to change that lens?
I go off comfort. So, and I don't mean, oh, that's nice and comfortable on my face. I mean, how am I feeling in my skiing? Is the visibility changing so that I don't feel confident in picking out the variations in the terrain ahead of me? And it'll be very subjective. It'll be different for all of us and different on different days. So if you think, oh, I'm a bit nervous, I can't quite see properly because it's too bright or because the light's too flat, then think swapping out to that other lens. Now, not all goggles come with two lenses. Some will only come with one. And that's why most snow sports goggles that come with one lens will have, there's different categories from 0 through to 4. 0 is essentially clear, so you get lots of light come through that. And then 4 is very, very dark. You're not actually allowed to drive in category 4 lenses. If you get category 4 sunglasses, brilliant for glaciers and high mountains, but you can't drive in them. But most goggles for snow sports are category 2 or 3, or you'll get a couple of options in the box. You might get a category 4 and a 0, for example, because you couldn't use a dark lens for night skiing.
And that lens level 4 that you're talking about, which is too dark to be legally allowed to drive in. Can you buy goggles like that with such a dark
Absolutely.
lens?
And actually, it doesn't have to be that bright for that to work really, really well. You can use a category 4 in a lot of conditions. But yeah, just the rules around cycling, certainly in the the rules around driving, certainly in the UK, mean you're not supposed to wear a category 4 lens. And just a kind of little fact, if it's for snow sports, it'll be called category S something. So category S0, category S4. But most of them sit in 2 and 3. And then you get photochromic, so light sensitive lenses. When a certain amount of ultraviolet light hits the lens, it will darken. And most of them will cover 2 or 3. So I might go category 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, 1 to 3. And there are a very select few from one brand. So other shoulder, hold on, that shoulder this time, Drillbow, they do one that actually goes from 0 to 4. At the minute, it's sat in an office, so there's no UV hitting it. It's actually completely clear, but it goes really, really dark. But not that many cover all 5 categories.
Well, yeah, you anticipated my question about photochromic lenses.
Yeah, photochromic, photochromatic, light sensitive,
Okay.
all different things.
Okay. Earlier, I think you were talking about the visor helmets when you were talking about, the color handling. And I think this is a very kind of personal thing, isn't it? Because my contention is everyone sees colors differently. You've only got to go
Yes.
to. I think there's a website you can go to which is like how green is my blue or something like this, or that viral thing a few years ago as to whether you're seeing something black and blue or whatever. But the color popping and the color handling varies in every set of goggles, right?
Yeah, that's true, and it depends on the technology that brand is putting in that specific model. But at the top end, this is when you get the best color handling, and different brands have different names. Yeah, so you get things like Chroma Pop and Prism and Amplify. It depends on the brand as to what they call it, but they're trying to limit certain wavelengths of light coming through the lens, so it essentially allows you to focus on those other wavelengths, and different brands will choose different wavelengths of light. That's color handling, but the other thing is the tint of the lens. So the lens may be amber, or maybe brown, it may be yellow, it can be clear, it could be a much darker gray. And which you like will very much depend on your own eyes. So I don't get on that well with a bright yellow lens, but I know people that love a yellow lens that works really well for them in flat light. So make sure you try the goggle on. And honestly, this is where comfort is about how your eyes feel. You put a pair of goggles on, and when you get a pair that works really well for how your eyes work, they will feel comfortable for your eyes. And it sounds a strange thing to say, but go and try a few pairs of goggles on and you will feel the difference.
I love this idea that you can literally choose to see the world through rose-tinted spectacles. If you want to. But let's get on to the meat of the issue then, the goggles themselves. We've got I've seen your selection already, and we've got selections between £50 and then right at the top end. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, and this is more expensive than the helmet. So this is £280, and it's by Julbo, but this is pretty special. So they have various models. One of the technologies that they use in a few different models, the one I'm talking about here is the launcher. That's the model name, launcher reactive, because it's light sensitive lens, photochromic. But the lens actually pops forward of the goggle. It's still attached. It's not, you're not removing it. It's on little hinges and it pops forward. So you get a gap right around the lens. So if you're worried about fogging on hot days, if you're going to be going and hiking with your goggles on, this is a fantastic solution. It's got little magnets in it, so popping it back down, it's held really securely, and it's really very easy to close. So that system in itself is brilliant. They call it Superflow Pro, and it's on a few different models, as I mentioned. But the lens in this one, it's not their 0 to 4, doesn't quite cover that many. It's 1 to 3, but it has glare control. So often people may have polarized sunglasses, brilliant for taking down glare. The issue that we have when we're skiing is if you put a full polarized filter in there, it's very hard to distinguish between, say, icy patches and softer snow patches, because you can tell an icy patch because you're getting that reflection off it, that glare, that shine, and a polarized filter would take that out so you wouldn't see it. So they use a low polarized filter so you can still distinguish those harder patches, those bits you want to avoid. Covers category 1 to 3, has that big vent around it, as I mentioned, but it does have a low polarizing filter.
Okay, so a couple of things you mentioned there that are interesting to me. Firstly, you're saying that ventilation means you're less likely to overheat in it. So is this a goggle that you could wear while you're ski touring uphill?
Yes, absolutely. You could. I'm going to quickly, if anybody's watching on video, I'm going to grab it so you can have a look at this. 1 second. Thank you. I am back. So yeah, there's a gap all the way around. Oh, I'll pop that side out. All the way around the lens, and then the whole thing just pivots back down. It's a light sensor. This one's clear at the minute because it's category 0 because there's no
right.
UV.
It pops out. Right, I get it. I get it now. I mean, I think that is such a crucial thing if you're looking at ski touring, because you know, you don't ski tour in the best weather the whole time, and normally I would take my goggles off and I would switch to you know, sunnies. But sometimes those goggles are just going to give you a little bit more protection if you've got like hail or gritty snow or something like that, and you just want to have that protection around your eyes. So that looks really interesting. And actually, another thing that I don't think you mentioned there, which I saw, you know, when I was looking at this product as well, is to do with those photochromatic lenses. You can see digital screens quite clearly through it as well.
So but it's not so much the photochromatic. So that, if anybody's got polarized sunglasses, get your polarized sunglasses, look at your phone, turn your phone on different angles, and you'll see that the screen goes black. You can't see it. But with this, because it's not a normal full polarized filter in there layer, you can still read your phone and digital devices. So I'm diabetic and I have a little monitor thing, and actually if I wear polarized glasses, I can't read it at all. So this is a really nice thing for me.
Okay, I know exactly what you mean. I've got some brilliant sunnies. They're fantastic for a messy weekend that I use for my trail running, but you can't see a screen through them at all. Okay, let's move on to the second one. There was an Oakley helmet in the helmets selection. There's also a goggle as well.
Yeah, so this is completely new for this season. So the Line Miner goggle has been in their range for a long time, and it's a really nice, clean, cylindrical lens. So you think you wrap a lens around a cylinder, so it's flat top to bottom and curved down the side, as opposed to being spherical, where you might wrap a lens around a ball, so it's curved top to bottom and side to side. So this is a cylindrical lens, but it's called the Line Miner Pro. We mentioned before, you know, with lenses and stop 90 fogging, you normally have two lenses inside the goggle, and a one facing the outside cold air, and another one attached with foam around it against that warmer air on the inside. But this has a fused lens, but you don't get issues with fogging on it. It's done brilliantly well. They're not the only brand to do it. There's 2 or 3 other brands that use a fused lens. What I especially love about the new Line Miner Pro, you get it in a couple of different sizes, medium fit and large fit, and all of them come with a second lens in the box, and it's a new lens for this season, and it's their Prism Iced Iridium lens, and it is sensational. On flatter light days, on overcast days, put this lens on, and it's like a piece of magic's just happened. Honestly, it's so nice to ski in. Yes, it will be subjective a bit, but I did not test this on my own. I tested it with other people. I know Fion skied in it a lot and absolutely love this lens. You can still carry your speed on those more challenging conditions. Depending on the model that you pick, you will get the primary lens will allow different amounts of light through, depending on which lens you get, but they all come with this new second lens.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds great. That's the Oakley Line Miner Pro. That's still pretty expensive. I don't know if you mentioned
£259. So it is not the cheapest. Yeah, it's brilliant. But you know, again, on the sustainability thing, they use a lot of recycled materials. So you can put recycled materials in the strap. You use bioplastics for the frame. You use recycled materials for that soft bag for cleaning them. You know, which is fantastic, and you get a case that just looks after it as well. So yeah, yeah, super cool.
Okay, excellent. Well, third choice then, falling more certainly slightly cheaper than the previous 2. What have you got there?
Still, you know, it's £179. So, but that's kind of the ballpark for a good pair of goggles now. You do get 2 lenses with it. So this is actually a brand. If people come from motocross or mountain biking, they might know the brand 100%. And it is just as you imagine. It's not written in weird. It's 100 and then the percent symbol. This is the 100% Snowcraft. They make a few different models. They make a Norg, which is more expensive and looks really funky, very space age. But this clean aesthetic on this Snowcraft, you can get it in this standard frame or an XL frame, and they take the same lens. You can swap lenses between them. But they have their color tech in it. Their color tech's called Hyper. And it is so nice to use. They look amazing. They look fantastic, but it's actually in use. The way that it pulls out the definition in the terrain ahead of you is brilliant. I absolutely loved skiing this. I've tested it quite a lot. Really, really comfy. But it's just that color handling in it is brilliant.
Oh, okay. Well, we're moving into, I don't know if it's a more affordable level, certainly a less expensive level. And that was 179. What's next on your list?
Yeah, so the Smith Squad. Now Smith make one of the most expensive goggles out there, 4D mag, which is brilliant. Has a really odd curve at the bottom of the lens. They're bird's eye view, so you can see, you know, if you're going to do rucksack straps and things up. So you don't get that tech with the Squad. You get it in this small fit, which is what I want to talk about, or a slightly bigger medium fit. It's £125. Their color handling is called Chroma Pop, which I referenced before, and again, it works as, you know, this top line color tech that you get from brands does a brilliant job in varying conditions of pulling out the terrain, the variations in the snow cover. You can tell whether it's going to go from firm to soft, powder, etc. It comes with a category S2 lens as standard. So when we spoke about those numbers, this is right in the middle of the range. Really good for everything apart from the brightest, completely bluebird, blisteringly sun days. Just a really versatile lens.
So, sorry, are you saying that this goggle is better for people with like a, you know, smaller face, smaller head?
Yeah, so often something like a Squad S will be promoted as, say, a a ladies model, a girls model, because often women have a smaller face shape, but actually men with small faces, teens, it works really well. Also, I know quite a lot of girls that ski in a Smith goggle. It just works for their face shapes. Different designs from within the Smith range. But this Squad S, with the various testers that I work with, was just praised for its comfort, the fit, the look. It's got a semi-frameless design, so yeah, it's kind of cross between it looking like it has no frame, but then it has little bits of frame hanging over the lens as well.
Okay, well, that was the Smith Squad S 125, and then possibly to the relief of some listeners, we do have a recommendation at the what you might call the entry level that is much more affordable if you've got to kit out a family, or even if you're just trying to afford a ski holiday in itself. What's your entry level model, as we put it?
Yeah, so we actually covered almost this goggle when we spoke last season. So it's a Block Boa. It is nothing to do with the Boa Fit system that we've spoken about on ski boots, but this is the Block Boa Recycle. So for a couple of seasons, they've been putting more recycled content into their products, and the Boa Recycle is about 50% recycled content, £48. You still get that mirror finish on the lens. It's really comfortable goggle. It's a larger fit. They do smaller fit goggles. If you've got real youngsters, then Block have a fantastic range that you can pick from. But for older teens, for adults, the Boa Recycle at £48 is a great choice. Full UV 400, anti-fog coat, and AAA face foam, comes with a soft bag, all of that. So yeah, it's just a really good choice. It's not breaking the bank.
Excellent. Okay, well, we asked Ellis Brigham for their choice, and Chrissy from Braehead also sent that in. So if you're listening to the podcast, I'll drop that in now. And if you're watching on YouTube, I can reveal that it was the Dragon DX3 Plus. What do you think of Chrissy's choice there, Al?
I have not skied in that goggle. I have Dragon goggles.
Oh my God, we found something that you haven't tried.
Yeah, I love Dragon goggles, and I love the way that with their Luminlens tech, how it handles again, we're going to reference color handling, which may sound boring to hear it again. One of the most relaxed my eyes have ever been is skiing in Dragon goggles. I'm a big fan, and they do some massive frameless designs which looks super cool. So yeah, really interesting to hear her talk of that.
Cool. Okay, well, that's really interesting. So there's some really good models covered there on the helmet side of things and on the goggles side of things. We've got entry level, we've got the top of the range stuff, and I love hearing you talk about it. And I love the fact that we've managed to find something that you haven't tried yourself. There are clearly so many on the market, and you could say so much more. I just know that. I know we're trying to, come in under an hour on this episode, and I know you've got so much to say.
I feel sorry for you reading the notes, all right, because they're so long.
But I'll put links to all of those products into the show notes. And obviously, listener, you can buy all of those from Ellis Brigham. They've got 16 shops around the UK. It's thanks to them we're able to bring you these episodes, and you can buy their products at ellis-brigham.com. Now, we're going to move towards a close now. I do love all feedback about the show, and you can contact me on social at Ski Podcast, or by email, theskipodcast@gmail.com. And we have had a few people contact us about some of these episodes since our last recording. So let me just have a look at those. So James Rice sent me an email. He said, just listen to the ski boot episode. Excellent as always. Keep up the great work. And Colin from Twitter contacted us. He said, I got all excited after the ski boot episode and bought my first pair of ski boots, a pair of Nordica Speed Machine 3. Do you know that
nice
one?
Okay, yeah, and I have, that is a product I have skied in. Yeah, excellent. Good choice.
Cool. I also should point out I bumped into Toby from the Covent Garden store, who contributed to our previous episode. He reminded me about that while it is always best if you buy ski boots to go into the store, actually, if you do buy your ski boots online with Ellis Brigham and then take them in, they will do a free proper fitting for you in the store. So it's probably better to go in, but they'll do that for you anyway.
Yeah.
Also, David Fowler, he said, I enjoyed episode 219 about the history of Ellis Brigham. That's when we had Mark Brigham in. They're doing their 90th anniversary this year. And Andrew Greenwood sent us some feedback via YouTube. What did he say? Great show, guys. Very informative about ski jackets. And he also asked if Picture Organic do the women's Harken jacket in a men's version. Al?
Yeah, so, and I may pronounce this wrong, but the Nikon is essentially the men's version. Same materials, same insulation. The pocket design down at the waist is ever so slightly different. The women's has a kind of flap over the pocket, and the men's has a waterproof zip style pocket. But essentially, that's the men's version of that women's jacket.
Okay, I'll track that down and put a link into show notes on that one as well. And then finally, also on YouTube, Stephen Street said, and he was listening to our ski jackets episode in this respect. He said, "I can't believe the subject of pit zips under the armpit were not brought up in the descriptions. They're one of the most important ways of controlling heat." Now, I kind of thought that maybe that was mentioned, but you got any thoughts on that, Al?
Absolutely, pit zips are a great way of venting. So if anybody doesn't know, there's a zip under the arm, hence pit zip, but it gets called underarm venting as well. And you can unzip it. Some will have mesh behind it. Some will be allowed to just open completely. And that just allows some airflow. Of course, you can just undo the front zipper to get airflow through. Some will have zips on the chest or in different locations to allow venting as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm constantly doing it, but I use that underarm venting loads. As soon as you turn to touring and you're going uphill, depending on the exact temperature, if you need to keep wearing a jacket, got to get as much venting as possible. And just in general, when I wear, I guess I've got a couple of jackets. I want that option for sure. Cool. Okay. Well, that's brilliant, Al. Thanks for sharing your huge knowledge of all of these products with us again. Listener, if you like the podcast, there are 3 things you can do to help us. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or leave us a comment on Spotify. That actually helps other listeners to find us. You can subscribe so you never miss an episode. And listener, if you enjoyed this equipment episode, you might be aware that we have over, I think, 230 episodes now to catch up with. I had a look earlier. 172 of those were listened to in the last week. So there's so much in our back catalogue. Just go to theskipodcast.com, search around the tags and categories, and you're bound to find something of interest to you. Now, we will be back with our 5th episode in a couple of weeks' time. I have to check my schedule there, when we'll be covering the extremely important subject of how to keep your hands and feet warm when we're looking at gloves and socks. There'll be another regular episode of the podcast in a week's time. In the meantime, you can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. And for now, I'd like to thank Al for joining me and sharing his knowledge again. Thank you very much, Al.
Ian, thank you so much. Once again, it's been my pleasure.
Well, I really enjoy it as well. I know I'm kind of like the host, but I'm learning stuff the whole time. And hopefully, listener, you've learned stuff as well. So finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.